Beneath the sun-scorched stones of Jerusalem, beneath layers of history, prophecy, and time, something ancient has stirred the world into awe. Hidden for centuries beneath a long-forgotten section of the city's old quarter, what appears to be the long-sought tomb of Jesus of Nazareth has been unearthed, sending shockwaves across the globe. The announcement didn't come quietly. It burst through headlines, ignited debates, captivated the faithful and the skeptical alike. Archaeologists working a quiet dig under a 1st century structure came upon a sealed chamber carved into the limestone, untouched since antiquity. Within it, evidence mounted fast and hard, suggesting that this wasn't just any burial crypt. It was the tomb, the one believed to have held Jesus following the crucifixion more than 2,000 years ago. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. What made the claim so immediate and forceful wasn't just faith or tradition, but a striking combination of dating techniques, forensic analysis, and the extraordinary preservation of the site. Carbon dating placed the chamber squarely in the early 1st century AD, its position aligned exactly with contemporary writings about burial practices of prominent figures in ancient Judea. Inside were ossuaries, limestone bone boxes bearing names eerily familiar from the Gospels, engraved in worn Aramaic script. But more compelling than names or bones was what wasn't there. A central ossuary once clearly present but now empty, resting on a raised platform of chiseled stone. This emptiness, echoing ancient descriptions of a missing body and resurrection, has stirred ancient beliefs into fresh, tangible form. The implications struck hard and fast, more like a thunderclap than an echo. Religions rooted in millennia of tradition suddenly faced a moment of raw, unfiltered confrontation with the past. Whether this tomb housed the historical Jesus, or merely aligned with lore and scripture, the find offered something no scripture ever truly could. Touchable, dateable, solid stone evidence of a moment shrouded in both myth and reality. And yet, it didn't solve the mystery. It deepened it. Because nothing within the tomb settled the story. It amplified it. The location alone had long been overlooked, situated beneath a now crumbling Roman-era structure thought to be a warehouse. For decades, the site had been passed over by surveys, misidentified in dusty city records, and dismissed in earlier excavation proposals. But a shift in urban redevelopment priorities finally led to its re-examination. The entrance lay hidden behind what seemed like an ordinary retaining wall. But once the stone was carefully pulled away, the team descended into a time capsule. The passageway was narrow, slick with condensation, and thick with the scent of centuries. The air grew cooler as they moved, and then they saw it. A carved doorway sealed with heavy stone. It seemed invisible to the untrained eye. Beyond that doorway was a chamber cut deep into the rock, preserved from erosion by natural insulation. Unlike many tombs looted or crumbled over centuries, this one remained oddly pristine. The walls bore faint traces of pigment, reds and ochres likely once part of ritual markings. The stonework matched burial chambers from the period precisely, constructed by masons using tools and methods consistent with Herodian-era craftsmanship. What truly set this chamber apart was the meticulous nature of its construction, suggesting a burial of unique importance. The raised platform in the center indicated a primary occupant of high status. But more telling than the craftsmanship was the arrangement of the ossuaries and the inscriptions. Among them was one bearing the name Yeshua bar Yosef, Jesus, son of Joseph. It wasn't a name unique to Jesus of Nazareth, that much was clear. The name Yeshua was common in Judea at the time, but this ossuary had clearly once sat in the central position. The others flanked it as if to emphasize its primacy. The stylistic differences of that central box, now missing, suggested it may have once been removed. But when, and by whom? Was it part of a religious act, or had the site been quietly emptied long before it vanished from public memory? The mystery was compounded by a fine layer of myrrh and aloes coating the tomb floor, preserved in dry mineral crusts. The ingredients matched ancient accounts of the burial ritual performed for Jesus, down to their rare concentration and proportion. Even more intriguing was a faint, charcoal-drawn symbol on the inside wall, an early Christogram, older than any found in situ elsewhere. It linked the site not just to Jewish burial customs, but to emerging Christian iconography, a convergence both extraordinary and rare. The proximity to known historical routes and the orientation of the tomb to ancient Jerusalem's now buried pathways reinforced the possibility that this was not merely a symbolic resting place but an actual one. What the discovery touched off was nothing short of a global frenzy. It wasn't only religious communities who found themselves grappling with the discovery. Scientists, historians, sociologists, even governments weighed in. There were debates about access, about custodianship, about the preservation of sacred memory versus the advance of knowledge. But amid the noise, one thing stood quietly but firmly: the weight of evidence, the reality of the structure, the undeniable age of it, the eerily matched details that when taken individually might seem circumstantial, but together pointed towards something astonishing. It wasn't just the site that held significance, it was what it represented. For believers, it raised profound questions about the physicality of faith, about how tangible evidence can both affirm and challenge spiritual truth. For skeptics, it offered a fresh entry point into a historical conversation often overshadowed by theological walls. And for those who occupy the wide space between, it forced a reconsideration of what we know about the ancient world, about narratives handed down across centuries, and about the ever-shifting intersection between legend and history. In the days that followed the announcement, thousands flocked to the edge of the excavation. Pilgrims, tourists, doubters, mystics. Some came with prayers, others with notebooks, others still with protest signs. Yet all were drawn by the same gravitational pull. A door had opened into the past, not metaphorically, but physically, and through it, centuries of speculation and storytelling now faced the test of stone, soil, and silence. The implications rippled outward. Institutions built on tradition now faced choices about how to respond. Scholars debated not just the authenticity of the find, but what it meant if it was real, and even more provocatively, what it meant if it wasn't. Because even a mistaken identity wouldn't erase the power of the tomb's existence. Its very presence proved that some legends, no matter how veiled, can be traced backward with hands and tools and patience. Its ambiguity made it stronger. Certainty would have closed the book. But mystery, that immortal ember, kept it burning in minds across continents. Throughout history, archaeology has unearthed wonders: temples buried by sand, cities drowned by sea, scrolls pressed beneath volcanic ash. But few discoveries have threatened to realign the emotional and spiritual compass of the planet like this one. This wasn't merely a piece of history, it was a pivot point, a junction between belief and knowledge, not a shrine built to venerate a legend, but possibly the very place that legend walked out of. And that duality, faith balanced against evidence, myth walking hand in hand with fact, made it all the more captivating. The find also prompted reflection on how history is preserved or forgotten. That such a site could lay hidden for centuries beneath daily life, under markets and homes and stone walls, underscores the fragile nature of collective memory. What other truths lie buried beneath the world's cities, miscategorized or lost? How much of history has simply faded into the noise of time, waiting for a crack in the ground to bring it roaring back? In the global conversation that erupted, another layer took form, the human one. Stories poured out from those moved by the discovery, elderly pilgrims who had waited a lifetime to touch even the idea of Christ's tomb, young children whose imaginations were set ablaze by the idea that such a man truly lived and possibly lay buried beneath the ground for centuries. Artists responded with works both reverent and provocative. Writers pored over the implications, mapping the shift in cultural thought that might follow. Psychologists discussed the power of place in shaping belief. Even architects took note, marveling at how ancient builders achieved such precision beneath the weight of history. Perhaps the most profound effect, though, was personal. People found themselves talking again, not just in pews or lecture halls, but in cafes, parks, online forums, and whispered moments of wonder, about meaning, about history, about what it is to believe in something larger than yourself. The tomb, in its silence, became a voice, a mirror, a question. It asked nothing less than, what if this was real? It didn't matter that the tomb gave no clear answer. In fact, that may be its greatest power, because in leaving room for doubt, it left room for dialogue. And in doing so, it bridged gaps that scripture alone had sometimes failed to cross. Faith and reason, long painted as opposites, now sat at the same table, staring into the darkened chamber, wondering together. The academic world faced a rush of responsibilities. Tests were commissioned, samples sent to labs across the globe. Teams from multiple countries joined efforts to ensure no data was mishandled, no artifact removed prematurely. Experts in linguistics, epigraphy, ancient burial rites, and even weathering patterns were called in. Every layer of sediment, every speck of residue became a puzzle piece. The process was painstaking but necessary. For a find of this magnitude, every variable had to be accounted for. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Jesus' tomb being found after 2,000 years? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.